We're at Mobile World Congress. Great to be here again. 20th time for me. I don't know how many times for you.
7 or 8. I took a couple of years out because young family.
Fantastic. Lots of interesting stuff happening here. One of the big messages, obviously, is around eSIM. That's been bubbling along for a little while. SGP32 arriving. What's Pelion doing around eSIM?
We've always had an eSIM-first philosophy now for about 6 or 7 years, going all the way back to early engagements around SGP2 and deployments for there. We've done some fairly large campaigns to move SGP02 SIMs from different providers in North America. We've done some in Europe, and we have a few customers today that are actually benefiting still from the legacy installed technology. Over the last year, we've looked very heavily. We launched our SGP32 solution for consumer-based devices. So if you're looking for an IoT solution in a consumer-provided device or an SoC that's come from the consumer market, we can now provide profiles directly into that market. We're seeing there's quite a lot of use cases in brownfield or redeployments in industry. You see Cradlepoint and Peplink, they're supporting SGP22. And then obviously people are using things like iPads and others for workflow tracking.
Yep.
So we're kind of in that market. You're seeing that in healthcare, you're seeing that in a number of different locations, and the sort of that industrial router space has adopted 22. So we've got a solution for that. And then SGP32, as you know, there's a huge amount of hype around that. But we're only now just really beginning to see the sort of first real deployments, use cases, certified deployments going out. And we're working with a couple of vendors in that space to very quickly get ourselves certified and get up and running with some base profiles and connectivity there. So we really see it as an evolution. It's a continuation of the work that we've been doing for the better part of a decade now. All the things that we learned from the requirements you needed to deploy an O2-based solution, which is very much fleet management, which is what the SGP32 elements are bringing into kind of what was done with 22. And then that ability for be sort of device-led choice and also user-led choice as well to give a full automated deployment model for SGP32.
Because there's a lot of talk about how 32 will completely transform the connectivity landscape for cellular connectivity. But it sounds like you see it as more of an evolution.
For me, it's digital delivery. So eSIM at its heart for us as a company has always been more around about simplification rather than something that massively shifts the paradigm. The SGP32 is interesting in a way that you can, as a user or as a company, you can buy your own SIM and then go to a connectivity provider and say, I want that connectivity on there. But it doesn't fundamentally change the dynamics of how you're providing connectivity. It's still the same connectivity. You're just delivering that profile quicker, simpler, and easier. It has some benefits, and it has some benefits to the end user of avoiding vendor lock-in and kind of getting yourself in a situation where you can do that build once, deploy anywhere model, which I've championed for years throughout our various iterations of. You can build connectivity in, or the optional connectivity in from the start. And what eSIM and what we're able to do today is you can come to us and say, I want to make this work in Germany, I want us to make this work in America, I want us to make this work in Japan. And we can say yes. And we can deliver you 3 different profiles rather than you having to build 3 different SKUs of your device and manage your stock, manage your inventory. We can really help and superpower those just-in-time deployment models and allow customers to not have to arbitrage or make decisions about their product lines.
So effectively, it's another tool in the armory, but it's certainly not the entirety of connectivity.
Yeah, I mean, you still need to have connectivity, you still need to be able to deliver that connectivity, and you need to be able to deliver that connectivity consistently. I think the interesting thing that eSIM brings in is some of the previous challenges around what APN will it be, if I do a profile swap, will it actually come back, how does it fall back, how do you manage that? You know, these are problems that we've solved for a long time in the standard connectivity world. We offer that consistency of service across all the operators we work with so that we know if you flip from a Pelion profile on one operator to another on another, it will just work. And that configuration doesn't need to be there, and you know that the level of testing and confidence that we have of being able to flip those assets is very high. Like we did it for a very big logistics company in the US. They were unhappy with one of the providers they had and said, we want to switch 60% to this network and 40% to that. And we did that with, I think, a 97% success rate with no stranded assets. So, and that was using RO2. So, I mean, SGP32 is much more robust in how that communication channel happens and how everything else happens. And if we're able to get that level of success with something that everyone admits was not the best technology to do that, SGP32 to us is just more confidence that this is actually something that you can deliver and you can build your foundations on.
In terms of the robustness of that as a technology, I think it's been described as third time lucky for the technology.
I think 22 works well, and I think what they've learned from that was not every device has a screen, not everything has a user agent, not everything can do that, and they've built that capability into 32, and the benefits that I actually always felt, probably wrong, possibly wrongly, but from the technology perspective, I always thought O2 was the way that M2M and IoT fleet management had to be deployed. It's obviously got its challenges and its risks, but 32 solved a lot of those elements, but still maintained the fleet management aspect of it. Because a lot of people say, oh, well, you can just use 22 or you can go and provision all these devices, but if you're dealing with thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of devices, you don't want to have to visit every single one. You don't want to have to run the prompt. You want to be able to do that centrally, and you want to be able to do that from a fleet perspective.
Yeah. We should talk about some other areas of innovation. Obviously, Mobile World Congress is an opportunity to take a look at what's happening in the space around AI, 5G, and non-terrestrial networks, and a whole bunch of other things. Interesting innovation things that you've seen, and also what are your customers asking you about in terms of new innovative technology?
It's an interesting one. So, everything today is AI powered, and people want insights and people want actions. And I think what we're seeing a lot more demand for is greater visibility and more understanding of what their devices are doing, how they're doing that, and spotting problems before they become major issues. So we're using AI in that space for detecting anomalies and being able to provide, more confidence that the device state is performing correctly, it's secure, it's reliable, it's working. We're seeing some people pushing for, they want to do things faster, they want to do things quicker, they want to have 5G standalone is now only really becoming deployed worldwide, and we're now beginning to see some of the use cases that are coming from that. And then depending on your market, you're seeing, as you said, non-terrestrial networks. Starlink is a big, interesting one where you're seeing some more static or deployed ones looking to see whether or not they can benefit from that. And then your non-terrestrial networks, as we were discussing earlier, you're really looking for those use cases where you need cellular plus, not necessarily satellite only. And actually, what we're evaluating again is we used to do a lot of work in the satellite space in the early days, but we're reevaluating that again to see if there's actually satellite solutions that can sit side by side with IoT and enterprise level deployments to really kind of look to see how you help enterprises grow into the next level of connectivity.
I think on the NTN side of things, specifically MB-NTN and what will happen with the SA NTN, seems to me like it's more of a kind of a value-added service for on top of a cellular connection. It's not a technology you probably choose to deploy if everything you were connecting was satellite, not far from it, but it's kind of a add-on.
Yeah, an add-on or insurance policy. Yeah. So if someone's saying, I know I will go out of areas sometimes and I need to be able to get that, I need that connectivity to come through and I'm happy to pay a higher cost or I'm happy to do this. But again, I don't want to deploy a different device type. That's when you can see the sort of cellular NTN ones coming in, because you don't need to radically change your device in order to be able to benefit from it.
Are you getting people asking you about 5G?
Where we typically see that request coming in is people looking for higher throughput, higher data. And also they want to understand whether or not they've actually got a 4G plus deployment or an actual true 5G one. And we're only now seeing some of the major networks stepping up and saying, this is now 5G SA. And it's more, and again, it comes down to availability of devices as well. You're seeing the early ones now phasing out, and next generation ones are all 5G capable.
What factors are you seeing influence IoT buyers?
I think what you would have classed IoT buyers in the past are now actually enterprise buyers. So IoT has moved through that. We've moved through the hype curve essentially from, you'll remember in the many years you've been here, IoT was everywhere. 5G was everywhere. Connectivity was very much. Today, connectivity is seen as a given. So your IoT buyers are very much your enterprise buyers of yesteryear. They're looking for reliability. They're looking for security. They're looking for people to stand behind the commercial commitments they're making and deliver a service which they know will work. We've moved beyond that. We've passed the point where ubiquitous connectivity is a thing. It's a given. But now it's about, does it work? Does it work in the locations you need to deploy it? Do you have a provider that will actually stand behind and say, yes, I will make this work for you and I'll make it reliable, I'll make it secure?
Maybe increasing obligation or realization of an obligation. You said to stand behind. I kind of think of it as holding the hand of the customer as they build, deploy, run their IoT application. So it's not just as simple as here's a product.
Yeah.
Off you go. You've got there's much more to it than that, right?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think today, our customers are coming to us and saying, what is your uptime? What is your resilience? What are your service levels? And comparing that to other people in the market, because they're deploying more and more and more critical-based applications that have to work. You can't just have a solution that works or might be off for 3 days. I gave a talk recently in London, and one of the points of that, we were talking about digital twins, and we were talking about how useful a digital twin is, and it's only as useful as the data it can get to it. And a lot of the applications are like that, is if you're reliant on that data coming through, and someone's offering you a 99.5 service model, that could be off for up to 72 hours a year. And the question is, that could all happen at once, and they could still meet that SLA. And could your application survive being offline for 3 days? Yeah. And a lot of people are like, well, no. And I'm like, but that's the difference between 3 nines, 5 nines, and whichever else. And that's the level that customers are now coming to us and saying, can you give me 5 nines? Can you give me near fixed line reliability? And the answer today, with the modern technologies that we have in our deployment models, is yes. And I think that's the bit that's really taking me a bit by surprise, is that there's been that step change in the market and the industry of really now having to position yourself and having to actually stand behind, and you said, that obligation to provide the service to help a customer to ensure it works, because these are not science projects anymore. These are multi-million, sometimes billion-pound deployments that people are investing huge amounts of money in, on the promise that that connectivity will be there and that will work.
I think we're also sort of seeing a divergence maybe of, maybe call it critical IoT connectivity. I mean, who's to define what's critical? But if it's your application and your business depends on it, it is critical to you. But versus there's still maybe people providing a kind of a best efforts model. So I think we're starting to see an emergence of extra features and functionality that are based around delivering something which is got a higher uptime, higher guarantees around availability. You've seen that from customers, have you?
Yes, I know that's a market that we see a lot of now. And I think, to your point, there is that stratification between, I mean, we saw it in the fixed line world, you get what you pay for. There's a reason why businesses and data centers don't run on an ADSL connection. They actually pay, they put the resilience in, they build the solutions as they require that. And yes, they do then need something that says, this will be available for this amount, this uptime and this reliability, and you have to be able to prove that. Yeah. And I was having a debate with some of our team internally about, we always take a very transparent service posture. We say, we stand behind what we do. We publish anything that happens. We let our customers know as much as possible what's going on and anything that will impact their connectivity. And that's something that we truly believe is a differentiator. We want to stand behind that critical connectivity. We want to stand behind the fact that we're reliable, and we want to give those obligations, or hold that obligation with our customers, that they know that if they deploy with Pelion, it's a robust solution.
And the transparency also follows from that, providing them with full insights. Okay, to round off, what do you see that excites you in the IoT connectivity space?
I think today it's that maturity. I know it might seem a little bit an odd thing but seeing the market that we've been part of, and we've been here so many years, seeing it grow and actually become something that is almost now invisible. And that's actually really interesting to see. Is like, I said this, we were talking about it recently as well, is like, I remember when we were the cool kids, we were standing up on stage talking about connectivity will change the world. Now it's AI will change the world. But it's a combination of all of these things, and it's standing on the shoulders of giants. You couldn't do some of the AI work today, some of the data things that are happening, if you didn't have ubiquitous connectivity. So it's looking at it and looking at all the things around us that are connected to some network, be it cellular, be it Wi-Fi internally, or low power radio networks, or whichever, and just, it's in everything. And that's what excites me. It's the fact that we've kind of got past that point where it's, will this work? And now it does work.
And what can you do with it? There seems to be an emerging trend to now talk about physical AI as an alternative term to IoT, maybe.
Yeah, but no, I think for me, that's exactly how I see it as well. Is like, we've built these products and we've built these services to the point where they're now consumable, usable, and they're expected to work. And there's a lot of effort that goes into making sure that happens. But then people just to be able to use it to build really cool and really exciting and interesting things on top of it, because they have confidence that what you've produced, or we've produced as a market, works. And we're powering all of this as much as, we're a key component of all the things that are happening with technology because we've made that ubiquitous connectivity piece work. And we've delivered on that promise that everything that can be connected will be connected. And that's where we are. And I'm really excited to see what will be connected and what can grow from there.
Then it's kind of up to somebody else to take it on from there and what use cases and what applications might stem.
And from our perspective now, it's actually almost easier because we're in a space where we know what we need to do in order to help that happen. There's some things, as you said, that you can move to value adds and you can add additionals and you can help customers more. But we're now back in that phase where I feel it's like I talk to different customers and it's really interesting what they're doing. So I have a wonderful job. I get the ability to work in almost any industry because I go and talk to someone and they'll be doing smart agriculture or they'll be doing AI or they'll be doing robotics.
That's the best bit of IoT, incidentally.
And that's it. And like I told someone the other day who's doing like similar to what's over there, the robots, and it's a security perimeter robot and it goes around and it needs cellular connectivity if it's on a campus and it loses connectivity so that it can communicate back. And it's a wee box like that size. And it's just a really cool little thing. And and then the day before I was talking to someone about smart agriculture. And then like the day after I was speaking to someone about gas meter. Maybe that's not as exciting, but it's still a massive industry. And it's a massive industrial use case for millions of endpoints and millions of devices. And that's every day is different. And that's what continues to keep me here, continues to excite me and see what's actually growing from it.
Fantastic. On that note, Alan, thank you.